Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'm going to share with you why we use a mobile rabbit tractor to raise some of our rabbits on pasture and what we specifically like about this Joel Salatin inspired design, some of the things we don't like as much and some of the upgrades we've done. But before we get into all of that, I'd like to know from you. Maybe go down to the comments and let us know, why do you raise rabbits? Is it for fur? Is it for meat? Is it for, maybe hanging a rabbit's foot around your neck for good luck? And how do you raise them? In colonies, in cages, on pasture, using a hybrid system? Really let us know. We'd be super interested to learn more. But with that out of the way, let's maybe get into why you would bother raising rabbits on pasture. And there are several good reasons, I believe. One is that as they are on pasture, they eat grass, and so that means they eat fewer pellets, and that can save you, numbers vary a little bit, but I would argue that they probably eat about 30% fewer pellets, which means less money spent on feed and more profit. If you're in the market of selling your rabbit meat, that can make a significant impact. Number two reason is that as they are on pasture, they eat the grass and mow the lawn for you, so that's another advantage. And they obviously produce manure, so that fertilizes your pasture, your lawn, and introduces some soil disturbance depending on how long you leave them on a given space. And so that all of that helps really for the grass and the pasture to grow back more vigorously. And as you can see here in our backyard here, we all had a monoculture. It was Bermuda grass, and now look at it. It's anything but. There is very little Bermuda actually left because of all of the rotational grazing that we've been doing with our chickens as well as with the rabbits. Another argument from a marketing perspective, again, if you're in the commercial rabbit business, is that you can claim that you're raising pasture-raised, grass-fed, grass-finished rabbits. And not only is it a marketing label that you can use to charge more money because customers are willing to pay for it, but it ultimately also leads to healthier rabbits. And healthier rabbits means healthier meat, better quality meat, more nutritious meat. And that's a good thing. Speaking of health, since we move them every day, sometimes even twice a day, that means they are never exposed to their own manure for extended periods, and that can significantly improve the health of the rabbits by avoiding parasites and some of the other issues that you might face if rabbits are exposed to their own manure over extended periods. So those are just some of the advantages of moving rabbits. And speaking of this particular enclosure, what does it take to build? How much is it? Well, if you know Joel Salatin, which this design is inspired by, you know that he is very good at building infrastructure that is cost effective, lightweight, and easy to build. And this hairpin, as he calls it, is really no different. It took maybe a couple of hours to build. I built it by myself, so without any help. It takes you maybe a couple of hours, and it costs you somewhere between $300 and $400 maybe, depending on how much scrap material you have. It's basically just lumber, a little bit of lumber, some roofing material, and then mesh wire or hardware cloth around, a feeder, a bucket, and that's pretty much it. So fairly inexpensive, fairly quick to build. And the downside of, or let's maybe start with the advantages of this design, is well, first of all, it's lightweight, as I mentioned already. The metal roofing reflects a lot of the heat, so that means it's relatively cool underneath the roof, relatively speaking. Obviously, if it's like here, we are in summer now in Georgia, it still gets fairly hot, but this metal roofing reflects a lot of the heat, which means your animals are gonna be more comfortable. It's lightweight and easy to move. Even kids can move it if you build it how Joel designed it, with those skids on the bottom. And those skids are really meant for two things. One is they slide like on skis, so it's relatively easy to move. And then the second reason is that the rabbits cannot dig out, while still having approximately 70% of the opening available for them, to eat from the pasture. Because of those slats, they are spaced out by maybe 5 to 8 inches or so. They still have most of the opening available where the grass can come through, and they can eat it. Now, we decided to remove those to make it even easier to maneuver and to make it less likely for the legs to get tangled up when we move the tractor, while still having enough of a perimeter to prevent them from digging out. Now, we've had them dig out on a few occasions if we don't move them enough, or if we, for example, we come here in the evening and we say, what, we're not gonna move them, but there is already kind of a hole that they started digging, and then the next morning, they dug through. So those are some of the rare occasions where they have come out, but normally, even without any solid bottom or mesh wire on the bottom, or slats on the bottom, they are fairly well contained in there. Well, to access the inside of this guy, all you do is lift up that middle part. So that's the only removable part of the roofing, which has pros and cons. The pro is certainly that the roofing panels are not going to fly away if there is a strong wind. The downside is, because the opening is relatively narrow and because the roof is relatively low, that getting rabbits out of there when you have to can be a little bit of a pain. So stepping in there and grabbing a rabbit, especially if he doesn't want to get caught or she doesn't want to get caught, can be a little bit of a pain. And so it helps if you're of smaller stature, or if you have kids maybe, to get in there and take them out. That's one of the disadvantages of this particular design, and we tried to mitigate it a little bit by attaching the entire roofing surface on a frame that we can remove altogether, but that really increased the weight and made it less maneuverable, I want to say. And also, if you remove the entire roof, then there is a chance of rabbits just jumping out. So I guess that's the downside with this design, that you kind of have to suck up a little bit. The other thing that we noticed with the original design was that the feeders on the side, in this particular case we have actually 2 feeders on each side, but normally if you have a feeder on one side and there is heavy rains, the feed is gonna get wet. And so what we did is we built here a little bit of an overhang. In fact, the overhang on this particular model is not quite big enough, so the feed can still get wet, but you get the idea. We have it on some of our other tractors with a wider overhang so that the feeder is protected even if it rains heavily. That was one thing that, since the overhang here by default is relatively short, that we had to fix and change and improve. The other thing that I would highly encourage you is to have at least on one side a fairly thick mesh wire. So we use, I think, 14 or 16 gauge mesh wire on that side, so the nipples clip in properly without sagging, and definitely the feeder can clip in perfectly without them sagging. We've had those issues in the past where we used just chicken wire or thinner mesh wire and that didn't quite cut it. So really make sure you have solid mesh wire on the one side where you attach the feeder and the nipples. Speaking of nipples, we use just a 5-gallon water bucket up here. In this case, actually, we have 2 rabbits, and there are 2 bucks that we separated by... Let me show you this guy here. I'm not going to lift it up because I don't want those 2 bucks to go together, but we can just lift this guy up here. It's a separator that I built so we can have 2 bucks, or maybe even a buck and a doe or whatever. That Riva, cut it out. He gets super excited with those rabbits. So we have a separator in there that we built. That's one of the upgrades, so we can have 2 bucks in there on pasture instead of in a hutch, and they cannot get into a fight because they did not grow up together. They don't know each other. I mean, they do now, but they might not be super friendly. Another upgrade that we made is we added those solar panels that are attached to, or that power fans that are down here. And the reason for that is that even though those metal panels do a very good job of reflecting heat and light, it still gets warm down here, and we can tell that whenever the fans are running, the rabbits really hang out near the fan, so they seem to appreciate that extra airflow. It's a fairly inexpensive upgrade that A, doesn't cost much, but B, provides a lot of value for those rabbits to make them just feel more comfortable. And that's one of the upgrades we did. We have actually 2 of them here because we are testing this guy right now. For all the other tractors we have this one. And what we do then every day is we just move them, typically in the evening, because rabbits graze. They're more active at dawn and in the evening, and so we move them to a fresh patch every night. In some cases, let's walk over there for example, where we have more rabbits in there. In this case here, that's another one of our tractors where we have 9 rabbits in there, and those we typically move twice a day because they create quite a bit of soil disturbance, and we don't want to overstress the lawn too much so it doesn't take too long to regrow. So we move them twice a day, in the morning as well as in the evening. And moving them is fairly straightforward actually. All we have to do is, typically what I do is I remove the bucket, which is heavy if it's full. I just remove it, unclip the water nipple, and then I move them to a new spot. In this case now we have to actually move over here. So I'm going to rotate them. And in the beginning you have to be a little bit careful because they don't quite know what's gonna happen, and you might trap their legs if you move too fast. But as they get used to it, as they learn what's gonna happen every day, they get pretty good at either surfing on the slats or just staying ahead of the game there. And they really enjoy, you can tell whenever you move them, you can tell they appreciate the fresh grass, and they start munching immediately. And so that took what, 30 seconds maybe. We do this again twice a day for those guys because there are so many in there. And then the other thing we do is to refill the bucket. We have usually a bucket with pellets nearby, so we don't have to go all the way back to the main barrel. And we add the feed to the feeder, push it down a little bit, get some of the dust out, and then of course put the water back on so they have water to drink. And that is it. I mean, that takes literally, for all of our 3 tractors, takes maybe 5 minutes in the morning, and you get pasture raised rabbits that don't require a stationary hutch, that are healthier, that are happier likely. The only downside, again, or one of the downsides with this design is they cannot burrow, they cannot dig. So they're gonna be a little bit warmer because they cannot escape the heat to go underground like our rabbits do in the hutches. But that's why we have the solar powered fans for. And yeah, that's pretty much it. A couple of things that we've noticed that I would encourage you to consider is don't replace the metal roofing panel with plastic. Even though the metal is more expensive, it's also a little bit heavier. But if you do, the metal or the plastic roof doesn't reflect the heat quite as well. It traps it, so it's going to be significantly hotter underneath. So I recommend using those metal panels. I would also recommend not to use mesh wire on the bottom for several reasons. First of all, it makes moving the tractor significantly more difficult because stuff gets stuck all the time and snags. What we have actually here is, okay, come close. What we have here is, you can see, we have some of those tracks on the side to make it more difficult for them to dig underneath. But in the middle it's all open, and that's been working fine for us. As I've mentioned before, there are only a few cases where they dug out because they started already digging in the evening and we failed to move the tractor to prevent them from digging all the way through. But typically within a day's worth of time, they're not gonna dig out all the way, and that has made moving them and giving them as much grass as possible really a breeze. And yeah, with that, we're gonna wrap it up. I hope you liked this video. If you did, let us know in the comments what you think about this mobile rabbit tractor design. Would you consider using it? Do you see the benefits of raising rabbits on pasture? Again, we certainly do, because reduced feed costs, better health of the animal, fertilization of the lawn and of the pasture, soil improvement. There are so many benefits to this instead of having them on a cage or in a cage. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up. Hope I'll see you in the next video.